This is Ragnarok. The wolf breaks the chain it has worn since the beginning of the world. The sun goes dark. The serpent rises out of the sea. And the gods put on their armor and ride out to a battle they already know they are going to lose. You already have a picture in your head of how the world ends. It probably looks a lot like that. Fire, a last great battle, a judgment, the living and the dead sorted. And then on the far side of all that burning, something new and perfect that lasts forever. Hold on to that picture because almost nobody who ever lived actually shed it. Most peoples who ever lived saw a wheel. The world ends the way a year ends, in cold and dark and death, and then, exactly like a year, it begins again. The end is not a full stop, it is a season. Only one lineage on Earth ever pictured the other shape. An arrow, one final end, and then time stops. The version in your head, the final one, is the odd one out, and someone, somewhere, had to invent it. So go back to that wolf, and to the winters that came before it. 3 of them, with no summer between, and the sun going dark. Brothers kill brothers, and the chain finally breaks. And then the sky splits, and the armies of the dead and the giants ride to the last battle across Bifrost, the burning rainbow bridge, and it shatters under their feet. The great wolf swallows the sun. The serpent that circles the world rears up out of the sea. Odin is eaten. Thor kills the serpent and walks 9 steps and falls dead in its poison. Star by star, the gods and their enemies destroy each other, and fire takes everything, and the whole world sinks, burning beneath a black sea. That is the end. Except read one line further, because the Norse did not stop there. Out of the black water, a new earth rises, green and clean. The sun has a daughter, and she takes her mother's road across a new sky. A few gods walk back out of the wreckage. 2 humans who hid inside the world tree come out to begin the race again. Feel what just happened. The most violent end you can imagine, and it turns out to be a doorway. The world doesn't end. It is reset. Ragnarok is a winter, and on the far side of even that winter, spring. Now cross an ocean and an age to the Aztecs, and watch them take that idea and make it colder and far more certain. Because to them, the end of the world was not a prophecy about the future. It was history. It had already happened. 4 times. They believed we live under the 5th sun. The first sun was devoured by jaguars. The second was swept away by hurricane winds. The third was destroyed by a rain of fire. The fourth was drowned in a flood that turned the people into fish. 4 whole worlds, 4 whole humanities made and ended and swept off the board. And each time, a god had to throw himself into the fire to kindle the next sun and set it moving. And the 5th sun, ours, will fall too. It will end in earthquakes. The sky monsters will come down and eat what is left. The Aztecs even knew its name. For movement, the day the earth will shake itself apart. This is why they watched the sky with such dread, why the whole machinery of their ritual was built to feed the sun and buy it one more dawn. Not because they thought they could save it forever, but because they knew exactly how the story ends, because they had 4 endings behind them to prove it. To the Aztecs, the wheel doesn't just turn, it has teeth, and we are 1 turn from the drop. So 2 peoples, 1 shape. The world ends, the world returns. You start to think that's simply what the end is. And then you come to Hinduism, and the wheel gets so large it swallows the very idea of an ending. Here, the world doesn't end once or 5 times. It ends without number. Time moves in 4 ages, yugas, and each is worse than the last, virtue wearing down like a coin, until our own age, the Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel and darkness, the worst of the 4. And at the bottom of it comes Kalki, riding a white horse with a blade of comet fire to end the age. But that ending is not the end. It is 1 tick, because 4 yugas make 1 great age, and 1,000 great ages make a single day in the life of the god Brahma. And when that day is done, a night falls, and the whole universe is drawn back in and dissolved, and sleeps through a night just as long, and then Brahma wakes, and breathes it all out again. And even Brahma dies, and another takes his place for another 100 cosmic years, and another after that forever. There is a dance for this, Shiva, inside a ring of fire, 1 foot lifted, creating the world with one hand, destroying it with another, holding the drum of time and the flame of its ending at once, and never, ever stopping. Look at what Hinduism has done to your fear. The Norse world ends and returns once. The Aztec world 5 times. The Hindu world ends infinitely, and so the end loses its terror completely because it was never the end. It was only the world breathing out. The wheel has no edge to fall off. There is nothing to be afraid of because there is nothing that finally stops. So now you felt the wheel 3 times in 3 sizes, a year, 5 worlds, an infinity. And you could be forgiven for thinking every culture saw it. And then you go to ancient Persia, to the prophet Zoroaster, maybe 3,000 years ago. And for the first time in human history, as far as we can tell, someone breaks the wheel. Someone pictures an arrow. Zoroaster taught that all of time is not a circle, but a battle, a single, enormous war between one good god of light and the lie and darkness that oppose him. And a war has an end. History is marching toward one final moment. A savior born to a virgin, the dead rising bodily from their tombs. A last judgment where every soul crosses a bridge, wide as a road for the good, thin as a blade for the wicked. A river of molten metal floods the world, and to the good it feels like warm milk, and it burns the evil clean away. And then, this is the part no one had ever said before. It is over. Evil is not defeated for now to rise again next turn. It is defeated forever. The world is made new and perfect and deathless, and it stays that way, unchanging, good for all eternity. There is no next age. There is no night of Brahma, no 6th sun, no second green earth rising to be doomed again. The wheel has been snapped into a straight line with an end on it. One battle, one judgment, one perfect world that never turns again. That is the arrow, and it is about to travel further than Zoroaster could ever have dreamed. Because now go to the one you started with, the picture in your head. Open the last book of the Christian Bible, the Revelation of John, and watch what shape the end of the world has there. A final battle between good and evil, a savior returning, the dead rising bodily from their tombs, a last judgment, the books opened, every soul sorted, a lake of fire for the wicked, and then a new heaven and a new earth, perfect, deathless, where God wipes away every tear and it lasts forever. No next age, no turning wheel. An arrow. Look at those 2 lists side by side. Zoroaster on the plains of Iran, 1,000 years or more before John. A cosmic war of light against dark. A virgin-born savior. Bodily resurrection. A bridge, a judgment, a river of fire. A world made perfect and final. And then Persia conquers the entire Near East and rules the whole region for centuries. And the Hebrew scriptures, which before the exile had almost nothing to say about heaven, hell, a final judgment, or an end of the world, come out the other side of that Persian era full of it. And Christianity inherits all of it. This is why the channel is called Borrowed Gods. The most famous vision of the end of the world in the West, the one in your head, is very likely not native to the West at all. It is the arrow Zoroaster fired, caught and carried across 1,000 years and 12 borders, until it landed in Revelation, and we forgot it had ever been in flight. So sit with the 2 shapes, because that is the whole story. Almost every people who ever lived looked at the end of everything and saw a wheel. The Norse, the world burns and rises green. The Aztecs, the world has died 4 times and will die a 5th, and a god will kindle the 6th. The Hindus, the world ends without number forever, and so the end is nothing to fear. And one lineage, Zoroaster's, and the faiths that drank from him looked at the end and saw an arrow. One battle, one judgment, one perfect world that never turns again. And that difference is not small. It is the difference between 2 ways of being human. If the end is a wheel, then nothing is ever finally lost, and nothing is ever finally won. You are a season in something that has no last season, and you make your peace with the turning. But if the end is an arrow, then history is going somewhere. It has a destination and a verdict. Every choice counts toward a final tally. Progress becomes possible, and so does judgment. An enormous amount of how the modern West thinks. That time moves forward, that things can get better, that there's a reckoning at the end of it all, grows out of that one Persian idea that the world ends once. So the next time you picture the end, the fire, the last battle, the judgment, the world made new, remember that you are not looking at the way the world ends. You are looking at a way, a rare one, an arrow fired long ago on the far side of Persia by a prophet most people have never heard of, and that almost everyone else who ever lived would have looked at your ending and asked, gently, and then what begins? Tell me which shape your people gave the end of the world, a wheel that turns, or an arrow that lands, and I'll tell you whether they taught you to fear the ending or to wait for the next spring. There is one last thing hiding in all of this, and it is the most human thing of all. Every single one of these peoples, staring straight at the death of literally everything, the sun gone out, the world on fire, time itself running down, every one of them put something on the other side of it. A green earth, a sixth sun, another breath of Brahma, a deathless, perfect world. Nobody in any language, on any continent, was willing to end the story on nothing. Maybe that is the truest thing we've ever said about ourselves. That we can imagine the end of the whole world, the fire, the flood, the dark, and we still, every time, insist on drawing one more thing past the edge of it. A door and light on the other side.